Since their inceptions, the Church of England and Anglican Communion have been largely establishment traditions, with theologians such as Richard Hooker showing an obvious interest in maintaining the social order. Your criticism of Trinity Church and your actions on December 17th at Trinity's Duarte Park seem to center on what you call mainstream religion's unsaid contract with a societal order which keeps wheels turning and so many disenfranchised. Tell us about your experience as a bishop of the Episcopal Church, climbing that property line fence in purple cassock and being arrested. How did this act of civil disobedience reflect your critique of this contract with the social order?
Can you hear me? By the way, the wait staff should continue to move with libation here. A well-lubricated. I, along with Jim, have been speaking to lots of groups, and this is potentially going to be a lot of fun. I'm so nerdy, I answered all of the questions, even not my own. So let me read some of the things that I wrote down, because I tend to forget details, and then I'll extemporate a little bit too. To be clear, invoking Richard Hooker is to invoke the Principal Skinner of Anglican divines here, from The Simpsons. The questioner didn't use, with all due respect, didn't use, I think, Morris or William Temple or Michael Ramsey. So I feel a little bit like the deck is stacked when there's that reference. So where to start? Given Hooker's defense of human laws written because, quote, of the wild beast nature of man, I would find it difficult to find a good reference in him, a man so steeped in questions of authority in the Elizabethan era. He certainly wouldn't be pleased with my arrest, mind you. No, and he goes on, in defense of Hooker, no one ought to be hurt or injured by another, he says. He does open with this also. He says, quote, the law is commendable and is directed to the goodness of operation, end quote. And what if the operation, and I echo Micah here, what if the operation is bereft of that goodness? Also, my experience with populations in disaster recoveries in September 11th, you didn't put in there in that bio that I was the canon of the ordinary in New York City. And so I know something about New York beyond it being New York. It's my home. And so when that happened, that body blow happened, I happened to be the bishop of the armed forces. My home diocese was immobilized. The only way to get into the perimeter was through St. Paul's Chapel. And so I noticed something about disaster, and then Charles Jenkins asked me to do some of the same stuff after Katrina. So my experiences with populations and disaster recoveries after those events, 9/11 and Katrina, puts me more in the camp of Rebecca Solnit, who chronicles the craven aspect of humanity is not craven, it's nobility. People respond out of the generosity of how they've been created. There's a blessedness in how they've been created, and they respond that way. But it's, with all due respect to your question, I don't have too much here. It's Augustine, really, who encouraged cooperation with civil authorities. And we can trace back to Constantine, when the persecuted church nearly overnight had a vested interest in the Roman Empire's successful flourishing. In my homily today, I referred to Walter Wink's book, Engaging the Powers, Unmasking the Powers, Naming the Powers. Are you familiar with these books? These are books you should read. They're timely and appropriate. When he describes the domination system as the vehicle for progress for civilization through the years, he's not indicting our culture. Just as Hooker would acknowledge God's use of the created, the created is also potentially frail and fallen, and as institutions for humanity, They can be that way, but they can also function and thrive. So God uses them in spite of their fallenness. No, the problem is the awareness of this system has of itself. In Hooker's day, there was a continual reference to God and the created order, and moderated force and power. It was that way the world was known. You might say there was a balance, and the institutions created by God had a connection with the whole, as described by the church. That was the air that was breathed. There was no quarrel with an institution's interdependence and even its incompleteness. Indeed, there were created yet broken vessels, always in need of redemption. Redemption from what? Well, from the direction of self-sufficiency. That's the problem, this self-sufficiency as an end in itself. Jim's already mentioned, you probably couldn't get a CEO from one of the major corporations to a group in a conversation like this.
Bishop, we're past 4 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. Can I borrow extra time? Put $20 on the table. I'll do a couple of quick things.
Yeah, okay.
The courtesy of Citizens United, even those disembodied entities now have voices. You all know this. So frankly, this part of the naivete of this forum's theme, with all due respect, of ministry to the 100%, in order for ministry to even be considered like this, the dominant 1% would have to be aware of its unequal position of dominance and avarice. Moreover, 100% declaration sort of whizzes by the fallenness and sin that's inherent here. This quaint way of describing it has all the atmosphere of what one occupier once said to me, of having sherry to discuss social justice, but never getting around to doing anything about it. But back to the social order and the church's acknowledgement of its necessity. I'm going to pause there because I do respect to your time frame and make reference to some of these other things. I will just say this: many writers, Ross Douthat, a conservative writer, Carney Ross, Walter Wink, Chris Hedges, they all believe that the breakdown has occurred, and it's paramount for our conversation here that the church has in some senses colluded in this system, and I'm trying to seek some sort of awareness of this, and this is the breakdown of the conversation, even between Jim and me. We can't crack that nut.
Thank you, Bishop.